Good morning, everyone. My name is Joanne Pollock. I'm the Director General for Western Economic Diversification in Alberta. Welcome to Session 3, Support for Growth, Scaling and Establishing. Before we begin, I just wanted to cover a few housekeeping items for those of you who weren't on the earlier sessions. At the bottom of your screen are multiple application engagement tools you can use. All the engagement tools are sizable and movable, so feel free to move them around to get the most out of your desktop space. If you have questions during the webcast, you can submit them through the Q&A engagement tool. We will try to answer these during the webcast, but if a fuller answer is needed or if we run out of time, it will be answered via later email. For the best viewing experience, we recommend using a wired internet connection and closing any other programs or browser sessions running in the background that could cause issues. You can find additional answers to some common technical issues located in the Help Engagement tool at the bottom of your screen. Following the session, we will have 5-minute closing remarks from our event hosts to wrap up the event. So without further ado, sessions 1 and 2 provided valuable information on early stage and developing companies. This session will focus on funding and resources for growth stage entrepreneurs that are at the scaling and establishing phase. These type of companies typically have seen significant growth in terms of customers, market share, employees, and revenue. Entrepreneurs at this stage have attracted previous funding and are looking for additional support to help their companies scale and enter new markets. If we consider technology readiness levels, companies at this stage are typically at TRLs 6 to 9. Without anything further, I'd like to introduce the presenters for this session. First, we have Oba Harding, Senior Business Officer at Western Economic Diversification Canada in Calgary. Tracy Deal, Regional Director at Global Affairs Canada. Cristiana Monzacco, Director of Industry Development at Alberta Enterprise Corporation. Michael Cardozo, Manager, Capital and Exports, Alberta Economic Development, Trade and Tourism. We're also expecting Lauren Anderson, Regional Director General for the Prairies and Northern Region for Innovation Science and Economic Development. So let's start with the first presentation with Oba Harding. Over to you, Oba.
Thanks, Joanne. Good morning, everyone. My name is Oba Harding. I'm a Senior Business Officer with Western Economic Diversification Canada, or to those in the know, we're often referred to as WD. So I know government uses a lot of acronyms. I'm going to try and minimize them this morning, but Western Economic Diversification Canada, we're commonly known as WD, and I'll be talking about the supports that we have for growth stage small and medium enterprises. So a little bit about WD. We are a federal government department. Although we span the 4 western provinces, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, BC, and Alberta, we are headquartered in Edmonton. We're a little over 300 people, 300 employees across the West, but we also maintain a presence in Ottawa as well. Each province operates as its own region. The Alberta region, we have just over 50 employees that are dispersed between Edmonton and Calgary. As a federal government department, WD promotes the growth and diversification of Western Canada's economy. And we help to address key economic challenges through strategic and targeted programs, services, knowledge, and expertise. The aim here is to use a place-based approach through engaging with multiple areas of government, federal, provincial, municipal, and stakeholders to address the realities of the regions and communities that we serve. To that effect, in order to achieve this, we make targeted investments as businesses and not-for-profit organizations to spur diversification, as in our name, innovation, and community economic growth. So you can think of us as an investor of sorts. We also act as a delivery agent. In addition to supporting our own programs, we help deliver on national priorities. We respond to regional economic dynamics. So for those of you that are aware, in recent weeks, we've rolled out a regional recovery and relief program that's providing funding given the current economic situation. We also use place-based research and knowledge to advocate for regional interests here in Western Canada and each of the provinces or regions, and we forward that in the national policy discussion. So we're strategic advisors in that sense. And lastly, we act as pathfinders and conveners. Our aim is to connect key economic stakeholders, including governments, industry, post-secondary institutions, Indigenous groups, and we connect them with federal departments, our own as well as others, and we act as partners. So who do we serve? Well, first and foremost, we're out here to support businesses in Western Canada. Our aim is to fund business innovation, to help with Western Canadian businesses to advance their technology, to scale them up in terms of size, reach new markets, and ultimately be more productive and competitive. We also work closely with not-for-profits. There are a number of industry associations, accelerators, incubators, and various industry-aligned groups that we aim to generate sustainable, inclusive growth and nurture regional innovation ecosystems. And last but not least, we work closely with communities, both urban and particularly in rural areas, to leverage their capacity and strengths and to sustain and grow and diversify their economies. So our priority areas. At a high level, WD has priority areas that revolve around clusters, but also inclusiveness. And inclusiveness in the sense to engage some groups in the economy that may be traditionally underrepresented, groups such as Indigenous peoples, youth entrepreneurs, and women. Our two main priorities of clusters inclusiveness are ultimately about WD's focus on strengthening these innovation ecosystems. We want to support growth stage entrepreneurs, community economic growth programs, and again, inclusive participation in that economic growth. So as a department, WD has identified the following Western Canada growth clusters. We have life sciences in Alberta and a number of investments that have been made and we continue to examine. Throughout BC, that focuses primarily on clean technology. In Saskatchewan, we have value-added agriculture and then advanced manufacturing in Manitoba. Diving a little deeper in Alberta, some of those clusters of priority include health data analytics and diagnostics, energy value-added, and smart agriculture. So WD provides strategic support in several program areas, such as the Regional Economic Growth Initiative, REGI or REGI, and that includes the Business Scale-Up and Productivity Program, which some of you may be familiar with, and also the Regional Innovation Ecosystems Program. So Business Scale-Up and Productivity, or BSP as it's often referred to, I'll be talking about that today, as well as the Accelerated Growth Service, or AGS program. So I'll start with BSP. If you're a Canadian company or a Western Canadian company looking to grow, Business Scale-Up and Productivity Program could be for you. BSP supports high-growth businesses that are scaling up and producing innovative goods, services, or technologies. The program aims to offer interest-free, repayable funding to incorporated companies in Western Canada. So Western economic diversification has taken a number of steps, particularly over the past year, to streamline and improve the delivery of the BSP program for businesses and entrepreneurs. You'll have multiple opportunities to apply for BSP funds through an expression of interest screening process. So it's a staged process. We accept expressions of interest throughout the year during intakes on multiple dates, and they're spaced approximately every 4 months. So there was an intake in February, earlier this year, February spanning into March. We're in the process of finalizing project approvals at this time. Those companies that have moved forward to the next stage have been contacted, and we're still moving through that process. Upcoming in September 15th, spanning into October, we'll have our next intake open, and we also have an intake plan for January 15th, early in the year 2021. So if you'd like more details about the program, of course, we're going to have some Q&A, and I'm happy to answer questions there. But you can also visit WD's BSP website. There's a website specific to the program, or you can contact a regional office.
Okay, thank you, Ova. Let's
I
go now to... Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry, Joanne.
Okay, go ahead.
And I'm going to speak briefly about the Accelerated Growth Service. So I'll move quickly here. That the Accelerated Growth Service, or AGS, is managed by another federal department called Innovation Canada. WD is a core partner in delivering the service along with key provincial and federal ecosystem partners. So this service is directed towards growth stage companies and gets relevant parties all in one room to talk about the offerings and help companies navigate the programs and what resources they can use on their growth path. So it's for incorporated Canadian companies with year-over-year revenue growth that generates at least $5 million in annual revenue. And an example of partners at the table are the National Research Council, or NRC IRAP, the ITAs that you may be familiar with, Alberta Innovates, at the federal level ourselves, WD, Innovation Canada, and the Trade Commissioner Service, or Global Affairs Canada. Also, financially, we have Export Development Canada and also Business Development Bank of Canada, or BDC. So you can always check out the Innovation Canada website for more details. So that's it for me now. Thank you. And you can always contact us at our general contact information on our website. You can follow us on Twitter, or contact a regional office. Thanks for your time.
Okay, thanks, Ova, and thanks for jumping in there and finishing your presentation. Next up is Tracy Deal at Global Affairs Canada. Tracy, over to you.
Thanks, Joanne. So I'm the Regional Director for the Global Affairs Canada Trade Commissioner Service Regional Office for Alberta and the Northwest Territories. I want to start by introducing the Trade Commissioner Service for those who may be less familiar. The Trade Commissioner Service has a long history. We've been around for 125 years, and we fall under the Department of Global Affairs Canada. Very broadly, the mission of the Trade Commissioner Service is to advance Canada's commercial interests abroad. And you may be surprised to know that we have over 1,000 trade officers working in over 160 cities worldwide, within Canadian embassies, consulates, and high commissions, and in 6 regional offices across Canada. I'm just going to move my slide here so you can see what I'm talking about. There we go. The 6 regional offices in Canada are the entry point for companies to this network. In Alberta, we have 15 trade commissioners located in Calgary and Edmonton, covering 12 sectors. And in all, we work with approximately 1,000 Alberta-based companies a year, supporting their international aims. There we go. We work primarily with Canadian SMEs that have a demonstrated capacity for internationalization. They have identified resources, they have a committed management team, and have or are developing an export plan. Companies we serve must also have the potential to contribute to Canada's economic growth, for example, through job creation, R&D partnerships, or increased production in Canada. And just to sum up our services, we provide advice and tools to help companies prepare for international markets. We identify qualified contacts. This could be potential buyers, partners, agents, lawyers, IP specialists. And when there are problems, we help to resolve them. And this could be issues related to IP, customs, or contracting overseas. So the sectors that we serve, in short, we work with companies across all industry sectors to get them where they want to go more efficiently. In Alberta, as an example, we have trade commissioners actively supporting the sectors that you are seeing on the screen. And on average, I'll add that companies that use the Trade Commissioner Service export 20% more than those that don't, and our services are free. So the TCS, or the Trade Commissioner Service, has a number of funding and support programs. I'm going to speak to 2, and starting with CanExport. CanExport SMEs provides financial assistance to Canadian small and medium-sized firms to develop new export opportunities in international markets where they have had no or limited sales to date. This is a 75-25 cost-sharing program. The program reimburses up to 75% of eligible expenses, with the company covering the remainder. The program requires applicants to submit a project for which expenses total between 20,000 and 100,000 Canadian, which means up to 75,000 could technically be reimbursed. And just a few details. To be eligible, you must be a for-profit company incorporated in Canada, have a CRA business number, no more than 500 full-time employees, and have at least 100,000 in annual sales in the last tax reporting year. The program is open to all industry sectors, including agriculture. The program aims to help introduce your product or service to new markets. Applicants can select up to 5 target markets for their project, and a market is eligible if during the last fiscal year, your sales figures for that market are less than 100,000 Canadian or less than 10% of a company's total sales, both domestic and international. For Brazil, China, India, and the US specifically, we have segmented them into subnational markets for the purpose of the program. So for example, if you are already selling more than 100,000 to northeastern US states, you can still apply for a project targeting the West Coast. A decision on your application will be received within 60 days. You can only have one active CanExport SME project at any given time, but you can apply multiple times in a year, provided that the total funding received does not exceed 100,000 per government fiscal year. So that's April 1st to March 31st. And finally, we only reimburse incurred expenses that take place between the start of the project date, which is the time that the project was approved, and the project completion date as you have specified in your funding agreement. Great. So here's a list of eligible expenses for CanExport. However, there are currently 2 restrictions that I want to identify. The first is for category A, travel for meetings and events. Given the Government of Canada's global travel advisory and unpredictable COVID timelines, we are not approving any travel expenses until further notice, even if that travel is far out. For example, if you have an event in February 2021. The second is category B, participation in trade events. We are also not approving costs for participation in any trade event until further notice, with the exception of virtual events and conferences. Other ineligible expenses include costs for participation in trade shows in Canada, capital costs, salaries, product development, or salary for in-market representatives to represent or conduct core business on behalf of your company in another market. But that said, I want to focus on the positive because this program is very much operational, and I strongly encourage you to take advantage of other categories of eligible expenses during this period, including covering expenses for adapting your marketing material or websites for a target market, and that includes online advertising, obtaining legal, tax, regulatory labeling, or business advice on a select region, or having market research or a feasibility study conducted. And I will note that one project can contain expenses in multiple categories. You can apply online, just type in CanExport SMEs into your search engine. It will be the first thing that pops up. But do reach out to the regional office and we will connect you with a trade commissioner responsible for your sector that can guide you through the application process. I also quickly wanted to talk about the Canadian Technology Accelerator Program. These are focused, rotating accelerator programs located in major tech hubs around the world, aimed at supporting small Canadian technology firms in the ICT, including robotics and AI, ag tech, life sciences, and clean technology sectors. While each program will differ slightly, generally each program includes mentorship from industry leaders, focused activities to introduce the cohort to local players, office space, and access to potential investors. The ideal candidates are companies that can demonstrate traction in Canada or another market with a viable product, have a strong executive team, a product market fit, and a market strategy in place. And I just wanted to highlight that we currently have applications open for Silicon Valley for digital tech, San Francisco and Minneapolis for ag tech, San Francisco, another cohort for clean tech, and Mexico City for smart cities. If you reach out to the email on the slide, we will provide you with more specific information on these programs and connect you with a dedicated trade commissioner. And if you go to our website, you'll also find a step-by-step guide to developing your export plan. And finally, if you are exporting or expanding abroad, I wanted to encourage you, and it was just mentioned in the previous presentation, to connect with Export Development Canada and the Business Development Bank of Canada to help manage both your risk and your capital. EDC products include export insurance, export financing for Canadian companies and for foreign customers, and bonding solutions. And BDC supports, they support Canadian SMEs, including exporters through financing, growth and transition capital, venture capital, and business advisory services. I will leave it there. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks very much, Tracy. Before we go on to the next speaker, I just had a quick question for you, though. Just wondering what kind of opportunities you're seeing for exports for Canadian businesses, just in terms of export destination, industrial sectors, or types of products. Is there anything? I know your programs seem to be open to all sectors, but if you're seeing any particular opportunities.
Right now, I don't think we're seeing any change in the types of industry sectors that are applying for this program. But what we are focusing on currently as a department is the life sciences sector, and where there are opportunities abroad for those companies who are providing either PPEs or other COVID response related materials. And so they would also have the opportunity to apply through this program to reach other markets or to explore other markets.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Tracy. Next up is Christiana Manzacco at Alberta Enterprise Corporation. So Christiana, over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Joanne. It's excellent to be here today. Thank you for having me. My name is Christiana Manzacco. I'm the Director of Industry Development with Alberta Enterprise Corporation. So who we are, Alberta Enterprise is a fund that connects Alberta innovators, inventors, and entrepreneurs to money, markets, and mentors. We do this by fostering a thriving venture capital industry in our province. So the way we do that is we manage a fund which, via our venture capital partners, invests into tech and innovation companies. So since our inception, we've committed about $198 million for investment into 16 VC funds, as well as the Accelerate Funds 1, 2, and now 3. And we cover a very diverse range of industries, forward-looking industries, including information technology, industrial technology, life sciences. And through our funds and their syndicate partners, we've invested more than $568 million back into Alberta tech companies. So the way that we do this is we invest in funds that complement the deal flow that we have in the province of Alberta. So in order to ensure that we do this in a very aligned, thoughtful way, we undertake a deal flow study, which gives us a very good understanding of the number of tech companies in Alberta, as well as their sector and stage breakdowns. So the last study we completed in 2018, and we are looking to undertake the next study this year. So when we make new fund investments, we match the sectors and the stages of our venture capital funds and their investment thesis to the available deal flow in Alberta, just to ensure that the startups that we have here have the greatest access to venture capital investment and mentorship that they can possibly get. So you can see through our portfolio of active funds here, not only are they creating access to that capital for startups, but also the value of their expertise, which they have through successfully scaling their own ventures, and through their knowledge of markets around the world, as well as access to corporate partners, syndicate investment partners. They bring the whole benefit of their network to Alberta tech companies. So we're also very excited to announce that we have launched a third early stage angel co-investment fund, and that would be the Accelerate Fund 3. So we've had Accelerate Funds 1 and 2, and because of their great success in providing early stage capital to entrepreneurs, we have invested $10 million into Accelerate Fund 3. And as previous, this fund will be managed by Yaletown Partners with the support of the A100, just to ensure that they have a really robust connection to very early stage Alberta tech startups. So beyond the funds, which we invest in, we strive to connect startups with both local and international investors, as well as programming and other markets via the Start Alberta portal. So Start Alberta was initially created by Alberta Enterprise Corporation, the Venture Capital Association of Alberta, and the A100 as a way to connect investors with Alberta tech companies. So it fills a void within the Alberta ecosystem as a free and open source central deal flow directory, which any external stakeholder to Alberta could look to in order to see Alberta tech companies which they could be interested in investing in. So it's free for anyone to sign up. And it initially started as a way for entrepreneurs to connect with each other and to find investment. So at the earliest stages of an entrepreneur beginning their journey to understand, what equity investment is available to me in Alberta, either through angels or through VCs, institutional capital. A really great first place for that entrepreneur to look is on Start Alberta to better understand the whole breakdown of the available capital we have in Alberta. But beyond that, working with ecosystem stakeholders through the Start Alberta Partners Initiative, with many of the stakeholders who have been on the call earlier today, such as Platform Calgary, which now stewards the Start Alberta program and has been very active in the growth of the platform. In addition to those partners that are helping to build out this platform, we've also been working with the Edmonton Regional Innovation Network, ERIN, Common Portal Subcommittee, which is now taking a very active look at exploring how we can also use the Start Alberta portal as a way to connect startups with programming and resources to show all the different support programs that we have in this province in one place that are tailored to those startups depending on their stage, their sector, and what their growth trajectory is. So that's a very exciting development. And the ERIN Common Portal Subcommittee has been a very big part of helping to grow the Start Alberta portal. So in addition to providing a comprehensive list of all the Alberta tech companies and now building out this programming capacity for entrepreneurs, Start Alberta also just provides a really critical forum for telling Alberta's entrepreneurial success story through publishing of press releases, news, Alberta tech events. It really helps to connect entrepreneurs in our ecosystem. And it also helps to tell the story of what we have to offer on an international stage. So these data partnerships have been developed now through Start Alberta, where with PitchBook and Crunchbase, where if an Alberta startup makes a profile on Start Alberta, they now get exposure through relationships with these databases to their reach of over 60 million people. So this is going to continue to develop. Other relationships with databases are being explored, as well as job websites, news partners, as well as just growing how Start Alberta is integrated into our ecosystem. So as a startup, if you haven't already made a profile, we highly recommend that you do that. And please do keep informed about all the ways that Start Alberta can support you on your entrepreneurial journey. So I definitely forgot to click forward on a few of my slides, but hopefully these will be provided later. And if you have any questions about the work that Alberta Enterprise does, or about the Start Alberta portal and you know, how you can work to collaborate there, please feel free to reach out to me and I'd be happy to answer those questions.
Okay, thanks, Jana. I'd like to now turn to Alberta Economic Development, Trade and Tourism, and Michael Cardozo. So Michael, over to you.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Michael Cardozo. I'm with Alberta Economic Development, Trade and Tourism. And one of our programs I'd like to talk about today is the Alberta Export Expansion Program, also known as AEEP. So just a quick overview of what the program is. AEEP is a funding program that our ministry provides to assist Alberta's small and medium enterprises in the development of export markets. And in doing that, we also provide support for key nonprofit organizations that are involved in the development of Alberta exports. So that includes also municipalities, First Nations, Métis settlements, as well as industry associations and economic development organizations. Back in 2019, we took a good look at the program, and what we did was found that based on feedback from our clients, some tweaks were desired with the program. So we took the old SME Export Support Fund, which some companies may be familiar with, threw in a number of enhancements and came out with the new and improved AEEP. So what we aimed to do with that refresh was to reduce the red tape faced by applicants through the application and approval process, much more simplified. Everything's now online. We also looked at increased funding annually for each applicant. It's now up to $25,000 per government fiscal year, which runs from April 1st to March 31st. We've added the option for a company to also bring a buyer into the province versus just traveling to the foreign market. So some more details about the program. When you are approved for the program, applicants can receive up to 50% of their eligible costs for small and medium enterprise applications. That can include economy airfare, intercity train or intercity bus fare, as well as standard accommodations such as hotel rooms, and that's capped at $300 per night per traveler. Some SME applicants are allowed up to 2 travelers per trip. And then we also cover costs related to the translation of marketing materials, as well as participant registration fee for trade shows, and as mentioned, up to 2 travelers. In terms of inbound travel support, again, that's $25,000 maximum annual support per applicant. So if a company were also to combine outbound travel, that forms part of that $25,000 total. You could bring potential buyers in and then, for example, give them a tour of your facility. With not-for-profits, the funding is similar, but a little bit different, with some not-for-profit organizations receiving up to 75% of eligible costs covered. And those organizations include First Nations, Métis settlements, industry associations, or economic development organizations. Municipalities would receive up to 50% of eligible expenses. So some key points about the program itself. All applications are now done online. There are no more paper-based applications to the program. In order to do an online application, you have to sign up for what's called a My Alberta Digital ID. Many people in the province may already have one of these. It is a government-wide initiative for applying to AEEP or any program offered by Economic Development, Trade and Tourism. You only need what's called a basic account, which you can gain immediate access to as you go through the MADI process, versus a verified account, which you do have to wait for a code to come in the mail. That takes a little bit longer. So if you are in a time crunch, I recommend not doing that. But that does give you access to more Government of Alberta services if you wish to use that same account to access, for example, your health records. Applications to the program, I must stress, need to be made at least 6 weeks prior to departure date. If you can't do that, the program may not be able to accommodate your application. Once you are approved, you will receive notification prior to your departure and have to sign a grant agreement with the government. In order to apply to the program, for SME applications, you do have to have annual sales of between $50,000 to a maximum of $25 million annually, have at least one full-time employee within the province, and you do need to be an incorporated legal entity in Alberta. If it's a not-for-profit application, you do have to have been in existence for at least 1 year. You need to be operating and have a permanent establishment within the province. And if you are an SME applicant, you must present a market entry plan as part of your application. And within that document, what we're looking for is basic information such as who you intend to meet, how you intend to market to them, details about what your product is, what differentiates you. In other words, we want to know that you've done your homework. So some more information about your application. Expenses are done on a reimbursement basis. So in accordance with the grant terms. So once your travel has completed, you've returned, you would have to you are required to submit a claim with all your receipts. The program will then verify the claim, process it, and based on the approval, have a payment issued to you. Incomplete applications can't be approved. So if you're missing information and you reach sort of a critical juncture in the timing, if we don't have that information in time, we can't approve you and you won't be eligible for funding under the program. We also have alternate criteria available to a couple of sectors. Tourism sector applicants must be part of a mission coordinated by a recognized entity. We have a list of those recognized entities within our guidelines. And technology startups may be eligible to have the minimum $50,000 annual sales requirement waived. I have a link in this deck to our program guidelines, but it's also very easy to find with a Google search on the internet. So some other tips regarding the program. For SME applicants, we do stress that you do need to include your market entry plan. As I mentioned before, we need to know why you're going, who you're going to meet with, and how do you plan to establish yourself in the market. Also, we want to see that you understand what your risks are and how you plan to differentiate yourself. Your application to the program could be for a single trip, or it could be for a multiple trip application. You do have to apply for a minimum of $1,000 in grant funding, and then you, as an applicant, you cannot exceed $25,000 annually. You are able to have multiple applications active. For example, if you were to travel in September to Japan and then have another application for travel in November to, say, Germany, that's something that we do allow under the program. You could also, without knowing specifically when you would be going to a location, for example, apply to the program and say, well, we know we will be meeting with a potential buyer. The trip will be 3 days in length, and we know it'll occur in the fall. You could specify that rather than specific dates. And then as those dates firm up, just keep in contact with the program, let us know. We highly encourage you to apply early. We find that some applications do require a bit of clarification. If we don't have enough lead time to have those questions answered, we won't be able to approve your application. There are stacking limitations for the program, so we do not essentially allow stacking from other levels of government. And what that means is if you're already receiving government funding for the travel, then you can't receive it from us. There are other resources that can help you with exporting. Economic Development, Trade and Tourism has in-house trade officers. The Government of Canada also has a very similar program to AEEP for called Can Export. AEEP is a little bit different from Can Export in that we are targeting a much smaller scale company. We also are providing support at a lower funding level. However, we do have a few applicants who are able to use both programs where AEEP comes into play for sort of spur of the moment type travel, and Can Export is part of their more long-term planning. Other export resources include the Government of Alberta's export website, which is export.alberta.ca. And also related to AEEP is the Export Readiness Micro-Voucher Program, and that is delivered on our behalf through Alberta Innovates. And we've also been involved with an initiative called the Trade Accelerator Program within Alberta that's currently being offered by the Edmonton Chamber of Commerce and Calgary Economic Development. So as we end this presentation, I just want to add that during the pandemic, we are still accepting applications. However, at this time, we're unable to provide you with an approval. So for sort of the immediate term, it's unlikely those applications will end up with an approval given the current travel restrictions that are in place. However, we do encourage, if you have something longer term down the road, to submit to the program early. We can work back and forth with you, have some of the details figured out, and that way when travel restrictions are lifted, it will be a very quick process for us to give you an approval. The program is also looking at potentially covering virtual events. So if that is something that you are considering, please submit an application. At this time, no decision has been made on whether the government of Alberta will support those. But if you do have an active application, then we can approve you very quickly should that occur. And that is the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much, Michael. I'd like to turn now to our last speaker, so over to Lauren Anderson at Innovation, Science and Economic Development.
Okay, thanks very much, Joanne. It's a great pleasure to be here. Two things. First, thanks for putting me on last. It's always good to be the last speaker through the day. But I promise that I'll have a real gem of a tip for all the innovators and folks out there who are interested in growing their businesses. It's really going to help you do that. So I am the Regional Director General for Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada. That's ISED for short. And I'll just slide over to the next slide here. There we go, hang on. I'm in a spot here where the internet is a little bit spotty, but here we go, got it to work. So who we are the lead department for the federal government who's charged with the innovation portfolio. We foster a growing, competitive and knowledge-based economy in Canada, and we are focused on 5 primary areas. First, we improve conditions for investment. Second, we enhance Canada's innovation performance. Third, we increase Canada's share of global trade. Fourth, build a fair, efficient, and competitive marketplace. And fifth, these are main categories, we support scientific research and the integration of scientific considerations into investment and policy decisions. So for you innovators that dialed in today or passed into this program, we have 5 key funding program areas that are broken down to financing programs, wage subsidies, loans and capital investments, grants and contributions and other financial assistance, and finally tax credits. And I certainly won't have time to go through all of those today, but I am going to provide you with a link that can get you there, and it will really help you understand everything that ISED is and how we work. So coming up is a map of Canada. Really what we do is we work with all Canadians in all areas of the economy and across the country to fill a mandate that I mentioned earlier. You see on the slide there are different colors just to indicate that there's 5 different primary regions. The region I'm responsible for is Prairie and Northern, and that's the orange one on your slide. But we do report into Ottawa, and we're constantly connected with them to help influence policy decisions and programs that will help facilitate the growth of Canadian business. One good example of that recently is our quick reaction to the COVID crisis pandemic, that we were able to custom design some programs that would really help Canadian companies contribute to the COVID effort, either with providing PPE or conducting testing or reacting to the supply chains that would need to be tweaked a little bit because of the international challenges we're all facing. But the key thing about ISED is we have proven, although we're a big department, we are resilient as well. We do serve the other key sectors. I'll just list them quickly. Science, as I mentioned earlier, all types of businesses, small, medium, large. We're heavy into the tourism. We have responsibility for spectrum management and broadband, and that's a big deal, especially in rural communities lately. Research and development, artificial intelligence, agriculture and agri-food, and as I mentioned, we're also helping source PPE for the COVID crisis. And the next slide is not going to speak to. I'm going to insert a topic that I wanted to bring up, and it's the tip that I think every innovator in this call will appreciate. If you have not gone to this site yet, Innovation Canada is part of ISED. They have a really fantastic portal that does help you understand, well, helps us understand who you are and what types of supports you may need. So if you go to innovation.canada.ca, that's innovation.canada.ca, you could go there now, and while I'm talking for the rest of my presentation, fill in the questions. There's a series of blanks that you indicate what type of business you are, the type of support you're looking for, what your main goals are, and you can click on more than one main goal, and a few other questions. And once you're done, you click submit, and it'll generate a tailored list of results that you can use that points to potential programs, funding sources, key categories of how you can go there and avail yourselves of the various programs and funding opportunities that are out there. I tested it out yesterday with a fictitious business that I run, and I'm telling you, it is chock full of great information that really streamlines and helps navigate the myriad of federal government funding sources that are available. So I strongly encourage you to go there, innovation.canada.ca. So I do have a little bit of time to talk about three of our flagship programs. The first one is Strategic Innovation Fund. Next will be Innovative Solutions Canada. And finally, I'll talk a little bit about superclusters. So the Strategic Innovation Fund is open to all types of businesses. You can put an application under one of 5 different streams. And you've heard throughout the day and last week's sessions, some of the successful companies and enterprises that have received funding from the federal government through either one of the SIF funding streams. So stream 1 is to encourage research and development that will accelerate technology transfer and commercialization of innovative products, processes, and services. Stream 2 facilitates the growth and expansion of firms in Canada. Number 3 is to attract and retain large-scale investments in Canada. 4th is to advance industrial research. And finally, number 5 is to support large-scale national innovation ecosystems through high-impact programs. So the last one that was added, not stream 1 through 5, but it's a COVID-specific stream that I mentioned earlier. ISED reacted very quickly to look at what can we do as a government department and really encourage companies to step up and do something that we can help fund. And we were able to do that in a significant way, and I think their results are showing themselves to be of high value. So for more information, when you go through that innovation.canada.ca site, one of the buttons that will come up will be Strategic Innovation Fund, and you'll be able to learn more about each of the streams. The second one is Innovative Solutions Canada. That's a really exciting program where government can serve as a first client. We put out various challenges, and if a Canadian company is interested in responding to that challenge, we'll provide funding, proof of concept up to $150,000, and that's for a period of up to 6 months. And that's to prove the technical merit, feasibility, and commercial potential of an innovative idea. And if you get past that stage, we'll also provide prototype development funding of up to $1 million. And that's for a period up to 2 years, and that's to be made available to folks who made it, or companies that made it through the proof of concept phase. So just like SIF, Strategic Innovation Fund, the ISC came up with a separate stream for COVID challenges. So we've seen a few of those come through, and very quick timelines and responses, and we've been able to get approvals out the door very, very fast. The third main category area I want to talk about is the superclusters. I think we've been hearing a fair bit about that. We have 5 superclusters across the country. Regionally based, we see the Digital Technology Supercluster is based in Vancouver. The Protein Industries is based in the Prairies. The Next Generation is in Toronto, and Scale AI in Montreal, and the Ocean Supercluster is in Halifax. That funding was announced about 3 years ago. We're into year 4. The funding is matched by industry. It's an industry-led supercluster designed to build ecosystems that may not have naturally come about. And like I said, the $950 million that has been invested by the federal government is matched dollar for dollar by the private sector. And we're hoping that it's going to create well in excess of 50,000 jobs over the next 10 years and have a significant impact on Canada's GDP. So the funding is non-repayable, it's industry-led, consortia, and like I said, it's just been a little bit over 3 years since it's been in existence. And really the intent is to align the efforts of diverse industries and to align the efforts of the industries, researchers, and intermediary institutions, really with the design to build those ecosystems that we know could form on their own, but they just need a little bit of a nudge. We have seen success around the world. For example, Food City in the Netherlands, they're very tightly geographically located. The challenge for Canada is we were so vastly separated that we need a bit of a push to get folks to, or companies to work together to build that ecosystem. So more information is available on our website. The other recommendation I will make is to, and just like every other speaker today, I think we've forgotten to click the slides forward, but here's the slide on the superclusters. You see the 5 across the country. And then I'll quickly go to our last slide, which is the other helpful hints. We do want to mention that the Canada Business app is a really great tool. I encourage you to go to download that, Canada Business. Also go to the innovation.canada.ca site, and our own ISED internal website has got tons of great links and help for entrepreneurs. The materials that will be made available include our contact information, the generic website, but also our contact information by Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and our call center. So Joanne, I think that probably covers a super high level overview. Happy to answer any questions that anybody might have.
Okay, thanks very much, Lauren, and thanks to all the speakers. I wanted to turn now to some questions that have been coming in as we have been listening to the presenters. There's maybe a cluster of questions, and I'd put this to Tracy and Michael, all around implications of COVID. So COVID costs, with COVID, like what costs would Can Export cover with travel restrictions? And what happens if you apply for AEEP or Can Export or other programs and in anticipation of travel, but travel restrictions change? So there's a few questions there. I'm just wondering again, Tracy and Michael, if you could respond to that. Maybe we'll start with Tracy.
Sure. So as I mentioned earlier, right now, we're not approving any projects that have travel in them or for trade events that are taking place overseas. And that's, I mean, it doesn't matter what the timeline is for that particular event. But with those who had applications in previously and then their plans were affected by COVID, if there were expenses made and they're unable to get reimbursed for those expenses, we will still cover up to 75% of those expenses.
Okay.
Yes, and we've taken a very similar stance as well. With applications that we receive right now, we're unable to provide an approval for any travel during a period where there are travel restrictions in place. If you have a prior application in, which I believe there are actually very few right now that are sitting active, and again, if you've incurred expenses prior to the pandemic sort of being declared and travel bans being put in place, then the program can reimburse you based on your agreement for those costs. But in terms of any travel that occurs right now, we wouldn't be able to cover anything, and we wouldn't have given an approval out for those.
Okay, great. Thank you, Michael. Next set of questions, and this is for Christiana, mostly about the stage of companies that you would be dealing with. Some questions about how a startup, for instance, would access Alberta Alberta Enterprise Corp funds, or the minimum TRL stage for companies, or if you might be looking at more early stage companies in the life sciences area in particular. So I wonder if you could respond to that.
Yeah, I would be happy to provide some additional context there. So often some of the confusion around how Alberta Enterprise plays in the ecosystem needs to be spoken to a little bit. So we are a fund of funds, which means that we make investments into venture capital funds, but then it is those VCs themselves independently that make investments into tech companies. So we as a fund do not do direct investing into startups. So if you are interested in receiving VC capital, of course, you should directly seek to build relationships with those funds, you know, and of course, in terms of the stage and the industries that are interesting to them. So that's why, as a first starting point, it can be very informative to go on to Start Alberta and look up these different funds that are part of AEC's portfolio. They are on the slide that I listed previous. They're also on our website under our investments. So you can see all the funds that we've invested in who now have offices in Alberta, and they have an active senior fund manager on the ground looking for deal flow. They've also been, of course, heavily vetted, and any one of those VCs would be great for you to reach out to directly in order to build that relationship, to ask for mentorship, advice, and down the line to also seek investment when you are ready for it and when you are at the stage that is of interest to them. In terms of the different stages that they occupy, our earliest stage funds would be the Accelerate funds. So Accelerate Fund 2, just they finished their investments just recently. That's the Yaletown Partners team. They have an active partner both in Calgary and Edmonton. And now we have also launched Accelerate Fund 3, which is the same team, Yaletown Partners in collaboration with the A100. So they would be the earliest stage fund that we have for kind of seed, pre-seed, and angel co-investment stage of investment. You know, Panache Ventures would also play at the earlier stages, but it really depends on a fund-by-fund basis and also on the industry. So I know that's kind of a vague answer, but of course I would recommend that you familiarize yourself with the different investment thesis of these funds and that you make an effort to contact them. And of course, they're also very involved in the ecosystem through you know, different ecosystem events, et cetera.
Okay, great, thank you. Next set of questions is mostly around criteria for AEEP. So Michael, wondering if you can talk a little bit about some of the questions around, will AEEP pay for booth materials, advertising books? What about local travel to meet local buyers? Are ag value-added businesses eligible? And what if you applied and the conference you applied for has been postponed to next year? Do you need to apply? So if I could just put those out to you to maybe respond as a group.
Sure. So maybe we'll work through the questions. I'll try my best to remember them. It was quite a list there. So what AEEP will not cover any costs related with setting up a booth at a trade show. All we do is if you were to attend a trade show, or the only costs we cover there are related to essentially the admission fee to attend as a delegate. With regards to the marketing material, the only thing that AEEP covers is translation of the existing marketing material that a company has to the language of their target market. So if you have marketing material in English already and you're going to Germany and you need that same material translated to German, we can pay for the translation costs up to the cost sharing ratio on that, provided that you've applied for that. In terms of if you have already applied to the program and the conference has since been canceled, yes, you do have to reapply to the program again. Your application would have been closed off based on the fact that the conference is no longer happening. Next year's event is considered a new event. We understand with a lot of these conferences, the details can change, including the location, the dates, costs, and whatnot. As well, the company that's applying can have some changes as well, where they may designate different travelers, sales level, information would of course be different, or companies of course can change their structure in any number of different ways. So we do need to account for that, and it would be administratively difficult for us to keep track of every single applicant and conferences that they've applied to. I'm not sure. Are there any other questions that I've missed?
Yeah, I think that's great. Thank you, Michael. We just have a couple minutes left, so I'm just going to throw out a couple of good questions out there that give you each like 30 seconds, so you can pick what you want to answer here. One is that really good question. There's clearly an overwhelming amount of routes and opportunities for funding. So what advice would you provide to someone to help them navigate through these programs and the application processes? So that's the first question, and you can answer that, and or questions about if you're a grad student or someone with a really great innovative idea. How do you start? How do you launch? How do you get connected with investors? And how do you launch yourself into some of these programs? So why don't we start, Oba, with you first, just a very quick response.
Sure. My quick response is that there was a great suggestion for the Canada Business app that's out there. I think that's a great way to kind of narrow yourself down and funnel yourself down to available resources. Also, there was some mention for the Innovation Canada website, which is essentially a tool that you walk yourself through to either filter yourself by sector, by size, or by stage of growth, all of which can be done relatively quickly. And then it pops out a narrow selection of programs that could be relevant for you at that stage of growth. Regarding students, I did a lot of work prior to my work with WD, working with, sorry,
I was going to say, we've got about 30 seconds. Can I just give Lauren a chance to jump in, and then we'll have to just end because we have to end on time. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Lauren, did you want to jump in?
Sure. I was just going to repeat the exact same thing. The Canada Business app and the innovation.canada.ca cannot be oversold. Go there, check them out. They really do a wonderful job pathfinding.
Okay. That's great. Well, thank you to everyone. And I think we need to end now. We're going to the closing session to hear from our event hosts. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Joanne and panel. This brings us to the closing of our session today. It was an extensive morning of information, and I'm sure many of you are suffering from information overload. On behalf of my colleagues, I want to thank you for participating in today's government funding workshop. I hope today's workshop series was informative to help you navigate the various government resources and ecosystem resources for you here in Alberta. I'd also like to thank all the presenters and moderators, as well as Alberta Innovates, for helping make today's event possible. This was really a team effort, and we were pleased to be able to do this in our partners with the provincial government, Alberta Innovates, and many of the other players across the ecosystem. While we're pleased to take you through a tour of funding supports of firms, and you saw the various levels of support that help to make you successful, just as an important part of this in this entrepreneurial ecosystem is the people within it, many of whom you saw present today. They come from a variety of backgrounds, expertise, skills, and passions, but they all want to serve you, the entrepreneur, and help you succeed. So take advantage of that support and connect with people who have lots of experience to share, and they are keen to share it with you. And if you don't get the support you need from one individual, keep persevering and trying. We're trying to create in this ecosystem a no wrong window approach, a no wrong door approach. And so we're looking forward to working together with you to help make you successful. Following today's workshops, we'll be sending a copy of all the presentations online, as well as a one-page outline for each presenter of their organization, offerings and contact information. And just want to end with, while there are no doubt uncertain times, I have every confidence that we will get through this and businesses across all of our sectors will begin to bounce back. And as Alberta begins to open up again, I hope today's workshop series has been giving you some valuable insight into the various programs to not only ensure your business will survive, but thrive and continue to help drive our economy forward. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to my co-host, Michelle Evans, and thank you very much for today's attendance.
Awesome. Thanks, Justin. And I'll keep it really short and sweet. Again, appreciate everybody's time today. I encourage you to grow your businesses. I want you to think big. Take advantage of the people supports programs that we have for you. Like Justin said, never give up. These are complex, difficult times, but we really do rely on each and every one of you to help us grow our economy. And we are just so excited about the things that we see coming out of the ecosystem. So please keep doing what you're doing. We're here to help and look forward to serving you.
Thank you.